Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Bhadram Karnebhi Shrunuyama Devaah Bhadram Pashyema Akshabhiryajatraah Sthirairangaistushtvagum Sastanubhi Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuh Swasti na Indro Vriddhashravah Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedah Swasti nastarkshyo Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatirdadhatu Om Shanti 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvisha vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Well, first of all, my best wishes to you and your family for this very auspicious occasion of Diwali. I hope you you have a very successful year next year, very happy year, healthy year. Yesterday, one of the newer students, Varalakshmi Venkatachalan, she and her husband are moving into this area from Connecticut. I believe they live in Hartford, and they're both physicians, and they're going to be joining the Stanford medical organization, and they'll be here in a couple of months. So anyway, I'm very happy to invite them to come here. She sent me an email with Shankaracharya's Ekashloki, and when she was sending me an email regarding Diwali. So that gave me an idea. I was going to talk about Diwali anyway, but I thought that I would spend some time just talking about some of the points about Shankaracharyaji's thoughts. So before we come to the seventh mantra, which I hope that we will have time, let's talk a little bit about Diwali, the significance of it for Vedantic students. Okay, so let's talk about that. So let me first briefly chant this Ekashloki that you may be able to find in, you can just put some just ask for Ekashloki. Interestingly enough, yesterday I had my first experience of the artificial intelligence using the Google phone. So it's called Gemini. Gemini is the name of the AI for Google. And I had never really used it before, but I used it with some very good effect yesterday. So let me tell you about that. So when I was looking at Ekashloki, it reminded me of what is called Jyotir Brahmanaha in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which we had studied before. I have studied it. We have never really had a class on it, but I've studied it on my own. And so these thoughts, which I'm going to now talk about in more detail, were very similar to what Adi Shankara is talking about Ekashloki. But interestingly enough, I didn't know exactly where it was in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, because it's a huge Upanishad. So much lengthier than Kena, Katho, etc. I wasn't sure. But remarkably, I went to my phone and I said, there is a verse in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad that talks about the source of light. Where is it? And I am telling you, surprisingly, very quickly, it gave me the chapter verse, the chapter section verse, and explained the whole thing to me. I said, my goodness, this is the power of artificial intelligence that I didn't know about. Before that, I would have to type several ones and so on. You can do this conversationally. So try that if you are using any AI tools that you may be familiar with. Anyway, that's just a commercial for AI. Now let me briefly chant this Ekashloki, which I have not had a chance to really study that much, but I could see the thoughts in it very similar to the one in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is the one that I will take up in more detail. Anyway, this is what it says. It says, Kim Jyotis Tava Bhanuman Ahani Me Ratrau Pradipadikam Syadevam Ravi Deepa Darshana Vidhau Kim Jyoti Akhyahi Me Chakshustasya Nimilanadi Samaye Kim Dhir Dhiyo Darshane Kim Tatra Ahamataha Bhavan Paramakam Jyotihis Tadasmi Prabho. It's a rather difficult Sanskrit that Adi Shankara has employed. Normally he doesn't do this, but it's a very beautiful verse. And the meaning of this verse is as follows. And this is the one that we will talk about. Is it your light that shines in the day as the sun and as the bright lamp in the night? What is the light that shines when I close my eyes? Which light illumines my mind? O Paramatma, you are the supreme light that illumines the awareness of who I am. I am that light. You and I are the same. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that's exactly the meaning of it. Anyway, this is the Ekashloki. All right, let's look at the meaning of it from the standpoint of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is chapter 4, section 3, and series of verses, there is a dialogue between Yajnavalkya. And Yajnavalkya is considered to be the foremost amongst the rishis. Because not everybody is a rishi. There are a lot of munis and there's, others. But rishis are the ones who, because of their past lives and karmas, were able to see the light of Vedanta in their mind. So this is what is called revealed. These are the ones who are revealed. And Yajnavalkya is considered in our annals as a very important and one of the foremost rishis that we have. There's even some, there's, I don't know, I have heard this, that there was like 400 rishis, that's it. There might have been millions of munis and other people, but rishis were only 400. And those are the ones that really revealed in this kalpa that we are living in. Anyway, so that's Yagyavalkya. So in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there is quite several dialogues between Yagyavalkya and the king Janaka. And the king Janaka, of course, is often quoted in our tradition. He was supposedly the father of Sita, but he's often quoted as a king who was a Jivan Mukta. And this is quoted as an example where grihasthas like you and I that are living a life of responsibility, we are married, we have children, we have property, and we have all the issues that go along with it. But deep in our heart, we have a yearning for moksha. What is all this going on? We have to really understand what is the truth behind it. And then this is where a mumukshu is born, and from the mumukshu, then a yearning for learning is born through dialogues with the rishi. And so this is what this sequence of this is. And they have several dialogues in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And this one is what is called Jyoti Brahmanaha. Jyoti. And I'll talk about other parts of it. So this is all about light. So this is how it goes. So the dialogue goes, first of all, I would even begin by saying that light as an entity is just absolutely remarkable in what it does. And we just take it for granted. We don't even think about it. Unless you have a blackout, which we do in our town several times a year. And when that happens, you're in some trouble. You cannot see anything. You stumble. The refrigerators are not working. All kinds of problems happen. But otherwise, once the light is there, you just ignore it. But just imagine, as a creation by Ishvara, how important light is. So I would say that in terms of looking at Diwali, this is probably the first thought that one should, as a Vedantic student, this is what we need to think about. You enjoy the Diwali and you have a wonderful occasion, everybody is together, you exchange sweets, all that is beautiful, very nice. But in terms of the thinking behind it, we need to direct our mind towards the following. Number one is, what an amazing thing the very presence of light is. And in the design of the cosmos, the Jagat, in the design of the Jagat, you cannot do anything unless there is light. And this is how the entire cosmos is designed, where you have a source of light like the sun, that has some limited field around which it can light things. And then once that, this is what is called light years. Once the light cannot go, then you have to have another star. And so the whole cosmos is populated very deliberately by Ishvara in putting sources of something which is essential for life. Heat, of course, also is very important. The sun gives both heat and light. But leaving aside the heat part that can be discussed separately, but if we just look at the light of it, what a remarkable entity. So in this dialogue, Yagyavalkya and Janaka, they are discussing what gives us the light to live. And the agreement is it is the sun. The sun in that sense really is the, you can call it the agent of Ishvara, or the very presence of Ishvara, the very instrument of Ishvara, but it is essential for giving us the very presence of life, for being able to do things. So this is by what light can you function? It says it is the sun. A very deliberately created entity that provides the basics of life for us. So this is number one. Then Yagyavalkya proceeds further. It says, when there is no light by the sun, when the sun is not there, what gives you the light? So one answer is that unless it's a moonless night, the moon gives us certain light. You can even see things in the moonlight. What if the moon is not there? Well, the light of the distant stars can give you just a little bit of light. For those of us that might attempt to live outside of a city, which I've done a few times, but I'm not very frequently. I have some friends. I have an American friend, Dick Matthews. He and I were colleagues at IBM in 1960s, and even before I was married. So we would go on these trips to the Sierras, and he was the one who taught me to live in the night in a sleeping bag and just look at the stars. And there was a lot of light. You could see you could actually see your hand and everything. So here Yagyavalkya says that, okay, if the moon is not there, you can possibly see something with the stars. What if the stars are not there? Can you function? So the answer is yes. If the speech is there, the speech guides you, because the light is supposed to guide you, right? It's supposed to tell you, okay, switch on, all right, go down the stairs, turn left, go to the kitchen, etc. What if the moon is not there, the stars are not there, the sun is not there? Can you function? Can something guide you? Yes, speech can. Speech? How? So supposing it's completely dark and somebody tells you, okay, can you get me a glass of water? And it's on the table, and as you go towards the kitchen, on the main table, there is a pitcher of water. Can you please go get that for me? Yes. If you follow the speech, you can do it. So the speech becomes an instrument for knowing, of functioning. What if the speech is not there? Nobody is talking. Can you function? Yes. Your thoughts are there. Your memory is there. Your memory says, I am thirsty, but I think there is a pitcher of water on the table. And if I just go to the kitchen, I can get it. You don't see anything, you don't hear anything, but your mind functions. Your mind functions. So it is said that, for example, supposing like it was happening in Helen Keller's life, if you are born with no eyes, how can you function? You can still function. Why? Because you have a mind. And the mind is the subtle light that allows you to function to a certain degree. So even if people are blind, for example, they can function. What if the mind is also not there? So now we have to go one step further. Another step we can talk in the middle is a fire. In fact, that I think we should definitely mention that, because in Diwali, so you have these lamps with a wick and oil, where the light of the lamp can guide you. You just leave it on. As it happens, sometimes in blackouts, you can light a match on a candle, and that gives you the light. And that light also is the energy of the sun. So really, sun is the source of all these lights. But in the case of a lamp, that is transferred over to the ability of the oil to give you the energy. Or you can have a stored battery in a flashlight. And that also has the ability to translate the mass into energy. The battery is the energy, and it translates into light. That's also possible. And you can use the flashlight for seeing things around. So that's also something there in the middle. But what if everything is missing? This is what we have to see. Everything is missing. If flashlight is not there, candles are not there, moon is not there, sun is not there, speech is not there. Your mind may not be functioning. And this is what happens in deep sleep. In deep sleep, your mind also goes to sleep. It does not eliminate itself, but it goes into the seed form. And there also there is no mind. But can you say you are not there? That doesn't make any sense. That you are also not there. That continuity of you before you went to sleep continues. It continues. That is the ultimate light. You don't need anything. That is the light. And I think we need to examine what is that light and look at its beauty and its glory of that light that you are. So for example, the sun needs to generate light. And there is a mechanism. So I believe it is I think it's a combination, or maybe it's either fission or fusion. In either case, it is the high energy of the particles that make up atoms that rub against each other or whatever and create the energy to create light. But in the case of sun also, it has a finite life because the friction created by the interplay of these atomic particles eventually draw away. And so even science believes that sun has some very finite light, some billions of years, and then it will become dark. So here's the point to think about. This is an important thing to see. All sources of light, whether it is the sun or the moon or the stars or the lamp is very easy to see because once the oil is dried up, there is no light generating capability in the diya, in the lamp. So that happens very quickly, in a couple of hours. So all sources of light are finite. Why? Because they are created. This is the thing we have to see, because what we often talk about, karma and karma phala, action and its results. They are finite. They cannot really last forever. It's like throwing a ball up in the air. Yeah, if you do it, even a rocket, eventually it comes down. So karma and karma phala are finite, and similarly, the instruments that generate light are all finite. Then comes the light of the self. the Atma, Atma Jyoti. The question is, what is the fuel for Atma Jyoti? Because we know the fuel for the others. In the case of the sun, the fuel is the fission and the fusion of the electronic particles. In the case of the lamp, it is the oil, which also is just not the energy of the sun, really. In the case of flashlights, it is the energy of the batteries. In the case of the self, what is the source of energy and what is the fuel? What can be the fuel? Does it need a fuel? It doesn't. So this is what is called Swayam Jyoti. Swayam Jyoti means the very nature of the Atma is Jyoti, is the light. It is the awareness, the awareful jnanam. I know. That is Swayam Jyoti, Swatasiddha. Swatasiddha and Swayam Jyoti are one and the same. So Swatasiddha means self-existent is called Swatasiddha. And what is self-existent is also Swayam Jyoti. It is its own light. They are not two different things intercombined. They are the same thing. And Swatasiddhatvam talks about Sat Swarupam. It's the very nature of Sat. And Swayam Jyoti, he talks about the very nature of Jnanam. And Jnanam is not changing Jnanam. It is Sat Swarupa Jnanam. It is, and it is aware. You are, and you are aware. So in the spirit of Diwali, the importance, the significance of Diwali for a Vedantic student, for one who is really interested in going to the very source of things. It's kind of like, you can just be satisfied with electrical appliances, how to repair it, etc., etc., at the level of the appliance. But if you were to look into what is electricity itself, how is that generated? How is it transmitted? What is the source of it? How long can it be maintained? Then you go into a more generic form of what is obvious. Very similar to that is the appreciation of Diwali is like enjoying appliances. Enjoy it, absolutely. But appliances are limited. They are conditional. They are dependent. So in that example, electricity is not. It is independent. It is the very source. It is what other things depend on. Something very beautiful, something very subtle. So the industry of generating electricity is something purer than just simply building appliances. So similarly, the appreciation of Diwali is good. Let's not knock it. It's a very beautiful function. It makes everybody happy and satisfied, and you get new energy for the next year. All of those things are very beautiful. But don't stop there. Look at the progressive functioning of light. And what is the ultimate source of light? Because, like in electricity, which is a separate example, but for the sake of electricity, even if the appliance fails, it doesn't matter to the electricity. It is purer. It is all pervasive. Very similar to that is that if the external lights fail, if the sun also becomes not visible during the night, no other lights are there, mind also is not there, I am still there. As a very nature, I am aware, I know. Just look at that. That is not dependent. That has no necessity for fuel. Just look at the beauty of it. It can never be extinguished. It is self-existing. It is self-aware. It is the light where everything else fails, but it cannot. What an amazing thing you are. That's who you are. You're not just an ordinary source of light. You're not just like electricity that also needs to be generated. Similar thing can be looked at from, and I think we were talking about this in some of the recent classes also, what is called sadhya and sadhana. Sadhya and sadhana. So sadhya means what needs to be established, what needs to be gained. And sadhana is the means of gaining, the means of attaining. Right? So sadhana sadhya are relevant. When are they relevant? When you are looking for something other than you. So, for example, suppose you want to look at a book. So, imagine what are the factors involved in looking at a book. So, one factor is that you need a light, any of the sources of light that we talked about, sun, moon, etc. So that's one factor. So that's what is called Adi Daivam. And also Adi Bhautikam. Anyway, let's not go into that. So let's keep it on very simple terms. Supposing you want to see a book, what do you need? You need a light. Okay? What else? You need your eyes. Without eyes, you cannot see a book. Okay? All right. So you have your eyes now. What else do you need? You need your mind. Because if the mind is not there, the eyes are unable to convey the information to you. You know, the usual thing we study many times is that you are looking at something, but your mind is elsewhere, so it doesn't register. So somebody can ask you, did you see the person? And you say, no. So he was right there. Okay, well, I was thinking of something else. Your eyes were open. The information was communicated, but it never really entered yourself. So now we have a third factor. So you have a light, you have your eyes, and then you have another karana, antakarana, which is the mind. So you need three factors. Then you can say, yes, I see the book. So this is what is called the sadhana sadhya relationship, right? Sadhya is that you need to read a book. You need to read something. That's the sadhya. And the sadhana is that you need all these three sub-sadhanas, light, eyes, and your mind. Right? Question is, what do you need to know yourself? Are you a sadhya that needs sadhanas? No. Why not? It is because you are necessary for both sadhana and sadhya to be effective, to be there. If you are not there, There cannot be a sadhya or a sadhana. So if that's the case, who are you? Where should we put you in this category of sadhya and sadhana? Clearly you're not sadhya. It is not something you want to establish. And clearly you don't need the sadhana. You are what you are. This is what is called, you are a siddha vastu, not sadhya vastu. You are already there. But the funny part is, even though I'm already there, I don't know myself. The fact that I don't need any fuel, that I don't need any dependency, I don't need anything, I don't need any sadhanas. This is the play of self-ignorance. That's it. That's all that happens. It is possible for a thing to be there and you don't know it. And this is very possible for other things, but it is also possible for yourself. This is the Maya Shakti. That it veils yourself from yourself. And it has to be told by the Shastra. Otherwise you cannot do it yourself. So therefore it is said, you are not a sadhya vastu. You don't need sadhanas. There are no sadhanas. If you want to call it the Shastra as a sadhana, go ahead and do that, but even that doesn't apply. You're already, it's not as though the Shastra creates you. It cannot create you. It cannot make you reach. It cannot be changed. You're already there. And all Shastra has to say, don't you see that? That's it. So Shastra is like light. Because the very function of light is not to create anything. It is simply to reveal something as it already is. That is the nature of light. It doesn't say, it doesn't give you any directions. It doesn't create anything. It doesn't say there is a table. It doesn't say avoid it. It simply shows there is a table, and if you want, you can avoid it. If the light is not there, you don't know there is a table, then you may run into it. That's all it does. So the Shastra also is like the ultimate light. This is how auspicious Vedanta is. That it tells you the way you are. You don't need anything. You are the ultimate source of light. Both the Mandukya and the Kathopanishad say that. Same verse. Na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra tarakam, Nema vidyuto bhanti kutoyam agnihi. He says the sun cannot light it. The sun can only light objects like the table, but it cannot light you. It doesn't light you. This is why this sun doesn't have the capability. You are subtler than you are the one who's seeing the sun. The sun is not seeing you. And the same thing goes for all other sources of light. So that's what this verse says. Na tatra, tatra means tasmin vishaye, that subject that we are talking about, you. Na tatra suryo bhati, there the sun does not shine. You don't need the sun to shine. If it shines, it is also within you. Na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra tarakam, neither the moon nor the stars. Na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra tarakam, nema vidyuto bhanti, not the lightning, which happens very quickly. Kutoyam agnihi, where can the laukika agni, the worldly fire, how can it light you? Kutoyam agnihi, tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. He says it is the other way round, my dear. The sun cannot shine unless you shine. You are the one that makes the sun shine. Amazing. And if one feels to see that, you have to see the example of the dream. So in the dream, which is completely, your eyes are closed and you are sleeping in a dark room with the windows down and all the lights are out, and you are seeing the sun. You are functioning in the sunlight. And you're talking to people. So don't say that the sun has to be external. In fact, as we begin to really understand this, you find that the same thing happens in the case of waking state. It's not just in the dream state. You cannot say, oh, that's just in the dream. But here the sun is. No. The sun can come and go. And it does. But you are still there. Then the only other thing is, did you create the sun? That's the only other question that we can have. For example, in the case of the dream, you can say, this can be an objection, right? The objection is, okay, I understand that in the dream you create a sun. But then as soon as the dream is over, the sun of the dream is also over. But that's not the case in the case of Jagrat Avastha. because you're not creating the sun. You are gone, but the sun is still there. So that's a different case altogether. It is not. It is not. So the method of this is something that requires more thinking, more advanced. This is what advanced Vedanta is. The answer is no. You are actually creating the sun. How am I creating the sun? Because in the case of the dream vasanas, the vasanas of the dream are very localized, limited. They have limited powers. Your memory and your ability to create the various parts of the dream, etc., are very limited, very limited. Why? Because the vasanas that create the dream characters and so on and so forth are pretty localized, very fresh. But in the case of your Jagrat Avastha, it is your own vasanas from millions of life before, consolidated, solidified, and the power and energy in those vasana is enormous. And one of the results of that is that you create the entire setup of people, of sun, moon, stars, all of that, and they have staying power. Like in the case of the dream sun disappears the moment you wake up. That's it. But in the case of your Jagrat Avastha, your entire vasanas that have been, this is your own personal vasanas, by the way. This is something that you have earned, you have accumulated, creates a sense of continuity. You see? This is where the Acharyas, the Swami Akhandananda makes it very clear. Because he says this is the vision of all the Mahatmas, is you did it. In fact, the whole thing is nothing but you alone, as we will discuss it in more detail later. So even there, it is not an exaggeration. And it is not, there's no fault in this, there's no error in this, that whatever that tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati, that you are the original source of light. And from your light, exactly that happens in the dream also, you create a physical sun and a physical light and a physical Diwali. You are the ultimate source. You are the Diwali. You are the ultimate source. You are the conscious being. So much so, this is the part that we may not grasp all these little things, but one thing that we can certainly grasp is that I am the light that doesn't require anything. This is an absolute amazing thing, that I am Swayam Jyoti, as Jnanam, 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 which is my nature. It is not my quality. It is not something that is fueling me. I am the one that is fueling everything. Then I am the one which is independent of anything. You see, so this same analysis, this whole analysis for Diwali and also the Jyotir Brahmana from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is to look at the source of light, right? Jyotir Brahmana. So it is to traverse the outward to inward on the journey of light. And it ends up in the final stop that all conditional lights, limited lights, changing lights stop at an unconditional light, an unchanging light. Always I am, I am, I am. You can never get rid of that. You are that. So this whole sequence of Jyotir Brahmana is traversing the course of light consciousness, jnanam, and comes up with something which is unchanging. The similar kind of traversing can be done in terms of existence, sat. So even though they are two separate aspects, one is Jyoti and one is called Sat, they all come together in you and it's the same person. How? So that we can do some other time. I'm not going to spend as much time on the Sat. But what happens is that you find same analysis, just like we did the analysis for Jyoti, for the various sources of light, sun, moon, etc. The same analysis can be done for Sat. Because you can say the table is. The chair is. The walls are. So that's is. Table is. Wall is. Chair is. Yes, so the table has some peculiar form. But the common thing is that the table is. The chair is. So this is called Sat, the analysis of what is. But the question is there something which is truly Sat? Because the definition of Sat means unconditional, has no limitations, no limitations of time or place or objectivity, subjectivity, nothing. It is the very nature of Sat. The table doesn't have that because clearly it can be destroyed any very easily. Similarly to all the other objects that I see, they are very conditional, very limited in terms of time and space, etc. But does that apply to you? Can you examine whether you disappear? Let's be very scientific about it. Let's analyze it and gather the data and see what the conclusion is. The table can disappear. Can you disappear? You can never disappear. Never. Even if you want to disappear, you cannot disappear. And I'm not talking about the body and the mind and so on. Those are also like tables. They're like instruments. Table is a very beautiful instrument. I cannot teach without having sitting down on the table and a chair. Similarly, my body is also an instrument. I cannot talk. I cannot think without my body and senses and prana and so on. Those are also instruments. I'm not talking about that. They can also disappear. But can I disappear? So what is Chit Swarupaha as the ultimate light is also the Sat Swarupaha. It's the same thing, which is the I, which is the Atma. And then the same thing about Ananda. Because I find their Ananda is in pieces, segments. This gives me Ananda, this does not give me Ananda. So those are all with respect to things that are different from me, from away from me, from separate from me, not away from me, but separate from me. But am I separate from myself? Do I ever find myself devoid of Ananda? You can say, yes, I do. But that's because you're your mind. That's not you. And that's, in fact, this is what we say, that even the rejection of one's mind, depression, for example, or suicide, that's also a rejection of the mind, not of yourself. In fact, there cannot be any depression or even a thought of suicide unless you have a reference point with respect to that you reject this condition. I don't like it. So even the thought of suicide, I'm just talking about very briefly about Ananda. So the lack of Ananda, the degree of Ananda, the limitations of Ananda are all not from you. They're all outside, just like Sat, same thing on light. So in the end it says you are the same person who is Sat, same person who is Chit, and same person that is Ananda. You are it. Satyam Jnanam Anantam. So then we can say that let the Diwali be a great occasion to enjoy, but for one that wants to look into the very truth of it, the very source of it, or it means of light and happiness and so on, needs to think some more, needs to learn some more, that you are the one who is giving light to everything. And that needs to be understood, and that's what Atma Jnanam, that's what Jivan Mukti is all about. That is the message of Diwali for a Vedantic student. So with that, we don't have time to go into the seventh mantra. We will resume that next time. Okay. Om Asato ma satgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityurma amritam gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. All right. Thank you so much for attending, and we will see you next week.